This video is sponsored by Helix Sleep. Throughout my culinary journey over the past couple of years here on YouTube, I've made some interesting discoveries and noticed some patterns, namely how certain ingredients and recipes are international. Every culture has their own version of it. And the one that has always stuck out most obviously, most glaringly to me, is the handheld street food pocket. The meat pastry, the hand pie, the fully enclosed meat-filled pastry, whether that be the famous calzone, the very American Hot Pockets. Every single culture seems to have their own iteration of them, including the four that I will be testing out today, the Empanada and the Jamaican beef patty, as well as the famous Salvadoran Pupusas and the East Asian Gyozas. How many out of these four have you tried in your life? Leave a comment down below, because I am genuinely curious, but let's get right into this one. Now I do realize I'm playing with a bit of fire here, even more so than when I pitted up the New York chopped cheese against the Philly cheesesteak. That was just two American cities, and now we're zooming out to full-on regions of the world. There's a real possibility of me pissing a whole lot of people off today, but the good news is once you all come after me with your pitchforks, I will have the most comfortable deathbed because of my friends over at Helix Sleep. Helix makes premium mattresses and bedding that are customized to fit your needs and are shipped directly to your door. Helix knows that everybody's different, so they developed their very own sleep quiz to match your unique body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Some of you may not know that 2 years ago now, I myself took their sleep quiz and they matched me up with this piece of perfection, and I haven't looked back since. This past 20 or so months of sleep has been some of the best I've ever gotten in my life. It is so true what they say about how your sleep can impact your overall day-to-day mood and physical health. I've definitely been feeling great recently, and if you sleep with a partner, you can take the quiz together to find something that is the perfect compromise for the both of you. And possibly the best part of Helix is that anywhere in the US, you can get your mattress delivered right to your door for free. And for a big dummy like myself, it was super easy to set up. It comes rolled up in a box and is so satisfying to pop open. And Helix offers a 100-night sleep trial in case it makes you nervous to buy something that you haven't tried yet. Test it out and make sure you love it first. And if you don't love it after those 3 months, Helix will pick it up for you and give you a full refund. Plus, they offer a 10-year warranty, financing options, and a flexible payment plan, so a great night's sleep is never that far away. So please do yourselves a favor this holiday season especially, and click that link in the top line of the description to go to helixsleep.com/David Seymour, and you can get up to $200 off of your mattress plus 2 free pillows. And of course, thank you so much to Helix for supporting the channel. But back to business here. Throughout this video, I hope you noticed that I attempted to get the most authentic and traditional versions of these dishes. So cooking con Claudia, please show us the way for the empanada. I grabbed some AP flour and granulated garlic, dried basil, salt, and some lean ground beef, as well as some black pepper, a poblano pepper, a red bell pepper, and some Mexican oregano, as well as some paprika, crushed red pepper flakes, salsa and butter, Monterey Jack cheese, some cheddar cheese and queso Oaxaca, a yellow onion, fresh garlic, sugar, and then fresh parsley and thyme. For this one, I started by prepping and measuring out everything I was gonna need for this, from all the vegetables, all the dried spices. Very much like if I was making a fried rice, I wanted everything ready to go as soon as that heat goes on. I also shredded up equal parts of all 3 of my cheeses and blended those together so they're ready to go at the very end. And then of course, just whipped up the beef filling, the homemade pastry dough, and combined all the components. Now going into this video, I knew it may be slightly controversial to some people. People are very protective and sometimes get very heated over certain foods. I'm mentally prepared for any and all arguments that might be incited down in the comments section, including those that say this video makes no sense because these are completely different dishes. While I would agree with those people to a certain point, my argument would be, A, we've made plenty of other videos comparing things that are even less similar than these guys. And B, try to break these down to their raw components. You've got a protein filling, sometimes ground beef, maybe ground pork, jazzed up with spices and herbs, sometimes maybe a cheese or vegetables. And then of course, it's just wrapped in a starch-based pastry. Maybe that's enriched with some butter, more like a pie dough. Maybe it's rolled to different thicknesses or cut in different shapes, but all in all, I would argue that these are similar enough to be able to compare today. Plus, although I may or may not be picking a favorite in the end, kind of depends how masochistic I'm feeling by that point, let's also just view this as a celebration of different cultures and how people can use similar raw ingredients to make such different, delicious foods. But these empanadas were looking like an incredible start once I got that pastry neatly crimped over and fried off in my 350-degree oil. I was loving the golden brown crust. I'm hoping the cheese is nice and melty in there, so let's give these a shot. I don't often toot my own horn, but look how perfect this little crimp job looks. It's so satisfying, and I love how crispy it feels and sounds. It's gonna be good. Wow. To no one's surprise, these are absolutely phenomenal. The spice blend in that beef is amazing. It pairs so well with that melty cheese. The exterior is great. My only complaint is I was a little bit scared to overstuff them and have it be difficult to close. And in that quest, I think I understuffed them. I could use a little bit more filling in there. Or maybe not, I don't know. You guys tell me if that's what it's supposed to look like, but these taste delicious. Oh my god. I do wonder if these would have benefited from a higher oil temperature, because they did absorb quite a bit of grease, as you can see. Usually the solution for that is just upping the oil temp, but all in all, cannot complain too much. A delicious start to this one. Next up today in our international Hot Pocket journey, we've got Chef Andre Fowles and his classic Jamaican beef patty. In order to make this one, you are gonna have to grab some flour and beef stock, garlic and onion powder, some white vinegar, scallions, and nasty unflavored gelatin, some curry powder and beef fat, shortening, brown sugar, salt and pepper, and baking powder, ground beef and American cheese, paprika, fresh ginger, allspice, turmeric, onion, garlic, an egg, some sugar, Scotch bonnet peppers, fresh thyme, and a big hunk of old bread. That was an absolute mouthful, yes, and it's because we have so many different components, so many sneaky things that are gonna find their way into this recipe. The big hunk of bread being for some fresh breadcrumbs that I just blitzed up in a food processor. This should really help with the filling retaining moisture as it cooks. We've got to make an ingredient that I've never heard of, which is becoming more and more rare these days, some Jamaican browning, which is essentially just a very deeply caramelized brown sugar syrup. This will also get added to our beef filling. It should add some nice depth and almost smoky bitterness. And pretty much just like all the other recipes today, we have to chop up our produce, which is gonna go in the filling, which will go into our pastry. You will get the hang of this process very quickly, just as I did. Now going into this video and these 4 recipes today, I was definitely most familiar with the beef patty, and in my head it was the most well-known of the bunch. But then I realized that could just be because of the country I live in, and it also could be just because of the state, and specifically the city I live in. For whatever reason, you cannot walk more than 25 paces anywhere in New York City and not find a place that sells a beef patty of some kind. Basically, every single food cart on every corner of the city has these things, whether they sell halal, hot dogs, or whatever. And every pizzeria sells these things too. They're right in the glass display case right next to all the other slices of pizza, which, as I think about it, is kind of an interesting pairing. If anybody knows the backstory of that, and why basically every single Italian pizzeria in New York sells these things, please let me know. Don't get it twisted, I'm certainly not complaining, because those things hit, especially at 2 or 3 in the morning after a long night out under the weather, which is why I am super excited to be making these today. Of course, I've also had my fair share of the ones that come frozen. You can pretty much find those in any grocery store, but I have never made traditional, authentic, homemade versions of these. Once I had the filling cooked and smelling incredible and all that pastry whipped up and completely chilled in the fridge, I began to roll my dough into some nice large rectangles. I tried to mirror the size and shape as best as I could of the standard New York City beef patty to the best of my ability. And then they just get baked off at 375 degrees for about 25 minutes. Now let me just tell you, when I cut into these, I was absolutely blown away. The filling looks so good. That pastry is nice and flaky. You could see the layers. Just like Andre did in the video, I tried to pop one open and slide some American cheese in there. With a little bit less success than he did. This kind of wanted to fall apart a little bit, but I don't care. I basically have the equivalent of Niagara Falls dumping out of my mouth as I speak right now, so I need to eat these immediately. Gotta get a closer look at these things. Look at these things. This is patty perfection. I could not have asked for a better cross section. The beef looks so good. Look how flaky that pastry is. I'm so intrigued by that melty American cheese. Let's dig into these. Hold on. Next level. If you couldn't already tell, these are to die for. One of the best beef patties I've ever eaten in my entire life. That filling is unbelievably tasty. Exactly the type of spicy, salty savoriness I'm looking for in a beef patty. The pastry is good, but my only complaint is that it's so flaky. It's like bordering on too flaky. I could barely touch it without it kind of flaking apart. Especially this cheese one, because the integrity already was compromised, but like, they are very fragile for whatever reason. The biggest difference I noticed between these and your average frozen patty or one at a hot dog cart is that the intensity of basically everything across the board is amped way up, especially the curry that comes through quite a bit, which is fine. I have no issue with that. Surprisingly, I think I like the plain one more than the cheese, which I did not expect. I guess I'm a beef patty purist, but yeah, highly recommend these guys. Third on the itinerary in today's hand pie pilgrimage, we're going to be testing out the Salvadoran Pupusas made by Curly and his abuelita on the Tasty channel. You will need some masa and salt, a pork shoulder and white vinegar, green cabbage and mozzarella cheese, a bell pepper, Mexican oregano and tomatoes, some onion and carrots, and some water. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that this is the only food I've ever made on this channel before. Specifically this one, actually, from Tasty, roughly 4 or 5 years ago now. And from what I remember, these things are delicious. The exterior is a very simple combination of some masa and water, mixed together until you get a white, Play-Doh-like substance. I also remember obsessing over the condiment that is typically traditionally served with the pupusa, called cortivo. That being some chopped up fresh cabbage, onion, and carrots, blanched a little bit with some boiling hot water, and then stuffed in a jar along with some vinegar and set to cure overnight. Realistically, I'm sure you can make this an hour ahead of time and eat it just like that, but obviously, the longer you let it sit and absorb those flavors, the better it's gonna be. I chopped up that pork shoulder, I seasoned it with a little bit of salt, and then seared that in a nice hot pan. And when you have big chunks of meat like this that you're searing off first and then chopping up in the food processor later, in my opinion, you get a much better end product. First off, it's much easier, in my opinion, to get that Maillard browning on chunks like this. Because there's more even surface texture, there's less moisture that's kind of leaching out of a pre-ground meat. Of course, it is possible to get some nice color on some pre-ground meat as well. How many times, how often do you feel like your ground beef ends up just like a gray mess? And like I said, those chunks are gonna get blitzed up with your tomato, onion, and bell pepper until you get a super fragrant and mouth-watering filling for these pupusas. We've been doing a pretty good job with the preparation and forming of all these different foods up until this point, but this is where I hit a bit of a roadblock. For lack of a better term, I had a bitch of a time forming these at first. Even though I had it wrapped in that plastic wrap, it still kind of dried out. Maybe I should have made it last instead of first and had it sitting around. These things were behaving more difficult than... This is what I do when I'm trying to come up with like a joke on the spot and I can't. I just sit here and wander off. All I had to do was add a little bit of the ice water, give it a good blending, and it was much better, much more workable. But eventually, I got all of my little masa balls rolled out in some nice even circles, formed up with the pork filling and some cheese, and then cooked off on both sides for about 2 minutes in a lightly oiled pan. Even though I have made this specific recipe before, I have absolutely no idea where these are going to rank amongst the other recipes. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm a little bit scared to do so, actually, but the time is now. Let's give these guys a shot. Oh, I love the smell of like a freshly toasted masa, like a homemade corn tortilla or something. It's so damn good. Let's see if we can get that satisfying meat and cheese pull. Oh yes, that's the stuff. A little bit of the cortivo on there. This is gonna be hard. I didn't do this on purpose, but I made mine a little bit thicker than theirs appeared to be in the video. And I kind of love that because the exterior is so crisp and firm while the inside is much more softer. It blends with those filling ingredients so well. The interior is moist and flavorful and just oozing with that meat and cheese. It is so good. Oh, don't worry, I will give you my full rankings at the very end, but right now, I'm just a happy boy. And last today, but very far from least, we are traversing the globe and hitting up East Asia to try their steamed pork gyoza. I attained some sake and soy sauce, rice vinegar and sesame oil, chili oil and cabbage, some pork and shiitake mushrooms, dumpling wrappers and some cold water, as well as fresh ginger, salt and pepper, garlic, and some scallions. Right off the top, could I have made my own dumpling wrappers? Yes, I could have, but am I going today? Absolutely not. I'm freaking beat from this video. There's basically no shot that mine would come out better than this store-bought brand, and these are the ones that they use in the video, so I'm just gonna follow this recipe exactly, you know, for true authenticity. And before you guys say anything, once again, I do recognize that this one is maybe towing the line of not being able to be included in this video. They were the ones I was most timid to add, but they meet every single one of the criterion we set at the beginning of this, so I believe that they belong, but you're free to argue amongst yourselves. This filling is a super flavorful combination of some chopped up garlic, shiitake mushrooms, of course the greens with both the cabbage and scallions, and then it gets seasoned up with some sake, soy sauce, salt and pepper, a little bit of sesame oil, some freshly ground ginger roots, and then all that stuff gets emulsified together. Even though I'm starting with these perfectly thin and round store-bought dumpling wrappers, my pleating method is gonna leave a lot to be desired, that's for sure. I used the same method that they did in the video, just tried my best, and then they get pan-fried to get those bottoms nice and crispy, and completely finish cooking once you dump some steam in there and cover it up for about 3 or 4 minutes. It has been quite a long, unpredictable day of meat and dough forming, capped off by what looks like a 4th delicious addition, so let's give these last guys a shot. I've definitely made gyoza in the past. I don't remember if they were for a YouTube video or just in passing in life, but it looks like I'm still a beginner. My forming methods leave a lot to be desired. Who really cares though? The look is passable and it's really all about the flavor. What have we learned today? I think the biggest lesson is that it doesn't matter what culture is doing it, any combination of heavily seasoned meat wrapped in a pastry or dough of sorts is absolutely delicious. I could eat 20 of these and be very satisfied, and of course this dipping sauce is to die for. Well, that's all folks. Have a good rest of your day. See you next week. This was really hard, and I just sat here for 25 minutes trying to decide what I'm gonna do. I'm only doing this because I promised you a ranking, but here it is. All of these were so good though, I would gladly eat any of them any day, and I'm sure there are versions out there that would best everything else from basically every category. This was purely my opinion, and how likely I am to crave and remake all the specific versions of the foods that I ate today. So all the love in the world to all the chefs whose recipes I remade, all the cultures who created these foods in the first place, all of you for enjoying this video, and hopefully I will see you all back here for the next one. Peace!
With the M without the AD. Flipping burgers and my money super lazy. Try and make a meal tonight, they ain't paying me. Try and supersize my life with my A team. Yeah, our style wasn't wavy, but we had a vision.